All right, shalom, shalom. First and foremost, we want to give all praises, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shai, Bahashem Rekakwadash. Giving double honors to the apostles and elders of Great Millstone. Shalom to the hopefully elect. Shalom to all the brothers out here laboring in this truth with sincerity. Shalom to the few sisters that watch. It's coming back with another lesson. Just went on AI and played around, this is a more accurate picture of or depiction of the tweet that the president put out this morning or yesterday, one of the two. But he had himself like he was healing the man, as well as the country, United States of America. But this is a more accurate depiction, man. Everything falling around him, people suffering, crying in distress. While he's manifesting his power, man. And, this is really, at the end of the day, what it's going to result to, and it's all prophecy, man. You can't stop it. So, I just wanted to put that out there right quick, but really want to get into this lesson about the Strait of Hormuz, blockade, which is not going to happen. And I'm just gonna explain why. I put Trump complete blockade on Strait of Hormuz impact. And I'm always going to chat, but it says a complete blockade of the Strait of Hormuz would be one of the most disruptive geopolitical moves in decades. Here's a clear breakdown of the likely impact if something like this were attempted by Donald Trump or any U.S. administration. So we know it would cause a total collapse economically. But hey, man, this is what we hoping for. We can care less. We're praying that, Donald Trump continue to, go on, man. Continue being that cruel Lord. So it says why the Strait of Hormuz matters. And we know it says about 20-25% of the world's oil supply passes through the narrow waterway daily. Major exports using it, Saudi Arabia, Iran, Iraq, Kuwait, and United Arab Emirates. It says it's only 21 miles wide at its narrowest shipping point. In short, it's a global energy choke point. But the impact, if he said, if he did what he actually said he was going to do, this would be the impact, man. That's how we know it's not going to happen, man. He's just talking, it's all talk. It's not going to happen. So, number one, it says immediate economic shock. Oil prices could spike dramatically, possibly $150 to $300 a barrel within days. Gas prices in the U.S. would likely surge quickly. Global stock markets could drop sharply. Why? Supply disruption, panic buying, and speculation. Now, if the wicked elites really wanted this to happen, it would. But it's just a matter on if they want it to happen or not. We don't know. But, we know that the MOTB, is not fully implemented. It's in the beginning stages. And if they was to do this, like, overnight, I mean, how could you, implement it? So that's how we know it's not this complete blockade is not gonna happen, man. So let's get some scriptures. We gotta definitely go into the scriptures, man. So we'll go to the book of Psalms, chapter 58. We'll just drop down to verse 3. It says prayer for punishment of the wicked. And we know Esau, Edom is the wicked. It says the wicked are estranged from the womb. they go astray soon as they be born speaking lies. This man been lying all day, saying that the image that he put up and eventually took down was not a depiction of so-called Jesus Christ or Jesus Christ, which is an idol anyway. That's why it's not such a big deal to us, in this truth. First and foremost, Apostle on down, the men of GMS, it's just an image to us, Now, if he depicted himself as our Lord Yahweh Shai, that'll be different, but, hey man, white Jesus is a false idol. So verse 4 says, their poison is like the poison of a serpent. Esau Edom is often likened to a serpent throughout the scriptures. It says they are like the deaf adder that stoppeth her ear, which will not hearken to the voice of the charming never so wisely. So nobody can control this devil, man. Whatever comes to his mind, he's gonna do. You can't stop it, especially if it applies to blood, money, land, power. This devil's going for it. You can't stop him. And, at a point where we are now, it's never been like this before in modern times. Back in the day, this devil went throughout the earth, conquering, putting the children of Israel in slavery, mass killings, genocides. And now, we're seeing sort of the same thing take place now, and ultimately it's not just going to be us, speaking of the Israelites, it's going to be the whole world. That's how these people are lost. You still got people on Trump's side like he's for them. Ultimately this man is a puppet, for the wicked elites. But, those are gonna be the people that go down with the ship, man. They gonna go down with the ship. And rightfully so. So it says, break their teeth, O power, in their mouth. Break out the great teeth of the young lions, O Lord, Yahweh. So eventually, when our Lord comes back, man, this place is going to crumble. It's going to be overthrown, utterly destroyed. This man's kingdom is going to be overthrown. And our Lord is going to set the kingdom of heaven up, man. Righteously, in righteousness. That's where we're headed, man. So everything this man's doing is really in vain, because it's all in control of Yahweh Hashem Yahweh Shai anyway, But that's the beauty of knowing the scriptures, being able to filter these things through the scriptures. You'll be able to understand, okay, will they do that? Maybe, as, how the rest of the world may be taking this seriously. We looking at it like, nah, the Lord didn't say that. We got the answers, man. Got all the answers, man. So, 2, it says global recession risk. Countries heavily depend. So, like it says, countries heavily dependent on imported oil. Europe, Asia would be hit hardest. Manufacturing, shipping, and airlines would see major cost increase. Inflation would rise worldwide. And the airports are already feeling it. They're raising the prices on luggage prices, checking your bags. They raised that, to offset the fuel costs. So everything is really, gradually happening. It's gradually happening, but, this is speaking of a complete blockade or closure of all ships, which this man, he could try, but ultimately, more than likely, it won't happen. So it says, Iran would likely view a blockade as an act of war. Possible responses: attacks on U.S. ships or regional allies. Yeah, so they're doing already attacking regional allies. But it definitely would be an act of war if they attacked a U.S. ship. Hey, from then on, it's on and popping. So do they really want to risk that, man? It says mining strait, missile strikes on oil infrastructure, high risk of a regional war in the Middle East. And eventually it will be a regional war, which is going to spread to all nations around the world. World War III. So it says shipping and trade disruption. No, not just oil. Liquefied natural gas shipments would also be affected. Global shipping insurance costs would skyrocket. Trade routes would be forced to reroute. Ultimately, all countries would suffer. But, it would be very detrimental to the U.S. to do this, to pull this off. The citizens would suffer greatly overnight. So, will he do this? More than likely not, man. More than likely not. That'll just be furthering the end of this nation. So, more than likely it won't happen. Verse 5. Salakia. Point 5. Some pipelines bypass the strait. It says Saudi Arabia and UAE, but they cannot replace full capacity. Only a fraction of oil flow could continue. Okay, now, it's my first time reading down on this. But point 6 is the impact on the U.S. It says higher gas and energy prices, political backlash domestically, potential involvement in a prolonged conflict. Ultimately, man, this probably right here more than likely would lead to, civil war, man. All out chaos. People are already struggling, and then you just go ahead and collapse the system altogether at one time. Oh, man, it's going down, man. Lord willing, soon. The last point, 7, it says legal and diplomatic fallout. It says a full blockade will likely violate international maritime law unless tied to declared war. U.S. allies, Europe, Japan, might oppose the move, could strain alliances like NATO. Well, this man don't care about NATO anyway. He's talking about leaving NATO. So, gradually these things are happening. So eventually we're going to get there. Eventually it's going to happen. It says bottom line, it says a complete blockade of the Strait of Hormuz would likely cause massive oil price spikes, global economic instability, high risk of war with Iran, severe disruption to global trade. These are the plagues that the Lord is going to bring, man, which is ultimately going to lead to civil war, insurrection, all this, man, all this. So, we see it. That's why we got these scriptures, man, to give us the plays before they happen. Let's go to the book of Habakkuk, chapter 2. And we'll just go to 4. It says, behold, his soul which is lifted up is not upright in him, but the just shall live by faith. So the Edomites, they can't get right. They can't get right. They see the world collapsing, and it's orchestrated by them, ultimately by way of Yahweh Shem Yahushua. But they just continue on, man, because they're prideful. The pride of thine heart has deceived thee. Book of Obadiah, but they've been in rulership. They don't think that empire can crumble. And only person that can bring them out is Yahweh Shem Yahushua. But they don't have any reference for the Lord. They don't even acknowledge the true power, man. But the just shall live by faith. In these times, we're gonna live by faith. When all hell is breaking loose. We went into this at camp, man. When all hell is breaking loose, Everybody losing their minds, not knowing what to do. But definitely about to resort to taking that chip. The men of the Lord are gonna live by faith. We're putting our faith in Yahweh Shem Shai, man, the creator of all. So we can't help but to win. Verse 5, it says, yeah, also because he transgresseth by wine. He is a proud man, neither keepeth at home. This man, he's trying to transgress by wine right now. His philosophies, his policies, all this, man. That smooth talk, the straight up line, saying Iran wanted to call this morning to make a deal. Come on, man. We know this is a lie. If you blatantly lie about a picture that you put up depicting you as Jesus Christ, and you say you thought it was a picture of a doctor. Since when doctors wore clothes like that, man? Even though our Lord didn't wear that, but Jesus wore that. That's how he was painted, how he was depicted. But it says, who enlarges his desire is hell, and is as death, and cannot be satisfied, but gathereth unto him all nations, and heapeth unto him all people. And this is the plan of this devil, man. And how much more so than to implement the mark of the beast, the RFID microchip, put everybody in one central place, digitally, and that's total control. Verse 6, it says, shall not all these take up a parable against him, a taunting proverb against him, and say, woe to him that increases that which is not his, how long? And to him that ladleth himself with thick clay. And you go into that word clay, is debt. This man is ladling himself with thick debt, heavy debt. That debt clock is steady going up, man. But he thinks he's in control, but this was just a quick lesson through the spirit and power of Yahweh Shem Shai. That, the blockade is in the news, and we stay up on these current events, man. Filter these things through the scriptures, and bring forth the word, man, as we were instructed to do. If we go up, to Habakkuk 2:1, it says, I will stand upon my watch and set me upon the tower, and I will watch to see what he will say unto me, and what I shall answer when I'm reproved. And the Lord Yahweh answered me and said, write the vision and make it plain upon tables, that he may run that readeth it. For the vision is yet for an appointed time, but at the end it shall speak and not lie. Though it tarry, wait for it, because it will surely come. It will not tarry, yeah. The MOTB is coming. World War III is coming, man. It's on the horizon. And soon it'll be here, man. So with that being said, we want to give our praises, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shai, Bahashem Rikakwadash. Shalom.